So we'll talk briefly about these different areas. We're not going to cover all of them, but when you're building trust, it's really important to target the right audience, and it's about empathy. It's about listening. It's about sharing values and being authentic and transparent and using the right evidence. But we're only going to talk about a couple of these areas today.
So who is the right audience? People are honestly seeking answers about science and medicine and food and farming, but they just don't know who to trust. There's so much information out there.
And this sentence right here was one of the most important sentences I ever realized as my career as a scientist, is that people want to know. They're looking, as we mentioned in the beginning. They want more information and they're seeking that information, but they don't know who to trust to determine if they need to follow that information. Now, we see examples of this all the time. I can't think of how many times in my career I've spent my time arguing with these folks. The folks who are deeply ingrained, who really are unteachable, who maybe hold views because of their personal politics or just because of a recalcitrant attitude towards science. It's a complete waste of time. But I spent forever arguing with them rather than the real target audience. This is the real target audience. It's the people that back in the beginning are in that blue portion of the pie. The people who are looking for information to protect themselves, to protect their families, to be able to live long, healthy lives and not have a problem with food in this case, or medicine, same approach. I spend my time arguing with the folks way over there on the one side when I should have been speaking to the people in the middle of the curve. And that's where I really blew it. Don't spend your time with them. Spend your time with them. Help them understand what science is and why discussions around food and agriculture are really important.
Building the rapport pipeline. Rapport is a close and harmonious relationship in which people or groups concerned understand each other's feelings or ideas and communicate well. Remember,
Yeah,
you need to engage with your ethics.
yeah, I adore that particular definition. It's so important for us to understand that in order for information to flow between two parties, that trust is the bottom line. If you have trust between those two parties, now information can flow. So scientists, it's not just about the data, the figures, that kind of stuff. It's about first establishing trust by building rapport.
So, how do you win the trust of someone that is emotional and maybe irrational?
Yeah, I mean, this picture really says it all. This is a picture of, someone in a dire situation who, because of their reptile brain, that system one thinking from Kahneman, is leading them to irrational and emotional decision making. And how do we change that? How do we appeal to system one? And that's where we get to the book, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Chris Voss was a hostage negotiator for the New York City Police Department, the fifth largest standing army on the planet. And Voss would tell us that the old way of solving a hostage crisis doesn't work. The idea of strong-arming a hostage, making demands of or a hostage taker, making demands, threats, that doesn't work. It never solves the problem. What solves the problem is exactly the opposite. When you enter into these situations, it's about listening. It's about using techniques to show that you understand where they are. And maybe you disagree with them, yet you understand them. You show somebody that you can be in their shoes, that you understand why they feel the way they do about a situation. It's empathy. It's just having an understanding of someone else's position. And I find myself in issues around politics, any other contentious issue, that if I start with empathy and saying, why do they feel the way they do, that then we build trust, we build that rapport. The other trick here is, and it's not really a trick, the other approach is intellectual charity. None of this is a trick, and you have to be sincere when you do this. That's the bottom line. Intellectual charity, you know of the straw man argument, setting up a very easy to knock down argument so that you can win. This is about the steel man argument. This is setting up the best possible argument for the other person. So someone might say, I don't like biotechnology because I don't like the companies. And then I would say, well, yeah, you saw the pictures of those lumpy rats, right? You're really concerned because of the effects on pollinators, right? So you actually feed them the information that reinforces their position and actually make a better argument than they make. That's what intellectual charity is. It's providing them with the information to show and demonstrate that you understand their argument better than they do. This way, when you come back with your points that are counter, you're showing that you have thoroughly thought through their point of view, and that your ideas are really honest and sincere in coming to address those points of view. It gives someone who's listening a sense of power in the conversation. You're not knocking somebody down to make yourself look better. You're building them up so that you can actually communicate an idea along with them.
A lot of these ideas are really not new. Aristotle formulated a lot of these thousands of years ago. You have pathos, which is your appeal to emotion, and logos, which we are trained to use exclusively, ideally,
Yeah.
which is your logic. But we need to bridge this gap with our ethos, with our ethics.
Yeah, what's really important about this slide is if you look at pathos versus logos, you frame any contentious issue conversation that we see on the internet. Critics, in this case of biotechnology, lead with pathos, with emotion, talking about what it's giving children autism, it's making animals sick. This is where they come from. And then scientists come in with logos. We'll tell you the facts and the information. And here you're seeing a setup again of system one versus system two, right? The threats appealing to pathos. And the thing about sympathy, empathy, pathos has that same root. This is where this argument between the heart versus the head, system one versus system two. And we can't ever win that by having pathos versus logos. Pathos wins every time, especially around issues of food. And that's why ethos is so important. And as Chris mentioned, this is our ethics, our values, our credibility. What is it about us as scientists that allows us to come to this table with some sort of and develop the trust that we need to develop? It's important that we lead with our ethics. So rather than coming in as a scientist, saying we will solve your problems, we need to address these situations leading with our ethos. And after we establish our ethics, the rest of it flows.
Demonstrating your mutual concerns with the public is a fantastic way of demonstrating your ethos. Consumers, as well as scientists, value education. They value reality. They value the facts. They also value agricultural production and the food that we produce and the food that we eat, and farmers themselves. They value the needy. They have empathy for people who are um, underserved, and for the ability for biotechnology to help these people. They also have concerns about their communities and themselves as consumers. And lastly, they value the environment. All these issues have a lot to do with science and a lot to do with you, and this is how you can show you have mutual interests with the public.
It's really an important point that after we've listened to someone's concerns and show that we understand why they feel the way they do, it then is important for us to be able to talk to them about our values, why we do what we do, why we get excited about science, why we put our feet on the floor every day, 7 days a week, and beat our brains out in the laboratory. Why are we doing it? Not how we do it, but why we do it. And that's really important, because you find that if we talk about issues, if we talk about concerns or values about the farmers, the environment, the needy, and the industrialized world consumer, you find that you get very little pushback because we're all on the same page. At the end of the day, these are the same values that are held between people who are academics or in industry, or people who really don't appreciate what biotechnology can do. Even the critics probably share our same values, which is what's so funny. We're all pushing for the same thing. And sometimes they forget that. So this is just a way to remind them that we are all shooting for the same goals.
So remember, develop rapport, define your audience. Who is going to be accepting of your message and who is categorically not going to be accepting of your message. Remember to practice active listening and with charity. Build that steel man argument that Kevin talked about. Lead with your shared values. Demonstrate that you care about the same things that they do. People will not be interested in what you have to say unless they know what you care about. And your evidence should reinforce your values, not the other way around, which may be very counterintuitive.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that very much here, but that's the idea. Start with your values and talk about the aspects of what you do and why you do it that really reinforce those values. Show them that what's coming out of the test tube can profoundly affect the things they care about the most. That's the way we change this kind of argument. I know that we're not really trained to do this as scientists. And many of us see this as a distraction from what we're supposed to be doing in the laboratory. Some people say it's not my job to interface with the public. But we live in the age of the internet where information is really important in dictating public policy, and even just whether a mom lets her kid eat hot dogs or a piece of birthday cake at some other child's birthday party. These are important topics that we get out there and establish the trust with the public before they're going to accept science. And what's really important about that is that when we talk about how jobs are hard to get for our graduates, how funding is hard to get for us as professional scientists, that's directly related to the fact that the public doesn't understand what they do, what we do. They understand what they do. They don't understand what we do. And we need to be better stewards of talking